And thank you for the opportunity to take a call on this bill. And those measures that member just mentioned, which is the children being involved in crime and also the posting on social media, are great ideas because they were part of policy announced by Labor during the election, which were copied by that party opposite. So that's great. We're in agreement on some of the things in this bill because there's other things that we're not in agreement on. And I was listening to the great Catherine Ryan on Radio New Zealand earlier in the week, and she was interviewing a former district court judge, it was Judge Harvey, and it was a really interesting conversation because they were specifically talking about the changes that Minister Goldsmith has brought to this House and the likely impacts that they will have. And the point was made quite clearly that a lot of the provisions in this bill already exist at the discretion of judges. So it's spelling out quite clearly what is already actually able to be done. He did raise, though, a fair point. He did raise a point that has been discussed before, and that's the kind of sort of semi-war that this government has waged upon the judiciary in terms of trying to curtail what is their usual sphere. And so I'd like to just refer to paragraph 22 of the regulatory impact statement because it's quite thorough. The Ministry of Justice has been doing a great job at pulling these together in short times, I understand. So paragraph 22, in the short amount of consultation they were able to undertake on this, they say that stakeholders have advised that the limitations on judicial discretion included in the proposed changes create the potential for unintended consequences. Unintended consequences. These risks include legal challenges on procedural grounds for breaches of New Zealand Bill of Rights. So that's additional money potentially that will have to be in that space if these additional legal challenges to the Crown and courts. These risks include, a prescriptive approach can drive court delays as sentencing becomes increasingly complex and can drive the potential for later guilty pleas, which would be the antithesis of one of the measures in this bill, which in turn may lead to an increase in the prison remand populations. Officials therefore consider it important that appropriate levels of judicial discretion are maintained across the various proposed amendments in the Reform Bill. And that was some of the similar points that Judge Harvey was making when I listened to him on Radio New Zealand, that there are unintended consequences. So some of these things make the shop front look pretty tidy and make it look like things are being tough. But we will see down the line how these play out in reality. And the concern is what is already a very congested court system can be made far more difficult. And that's no doubt why they might, the next bill will be wanting an additional judge to churn through some more of these things that will be happening in the space. Mr. Speaker, the 40% cap on sentence discounts does severely restrict judges' ability to consider the full range of mitigating factors in complex cases. And for those ones where a rehabilitative pathway might stop that person coming back and creating more victims in the system, that's a real loss. Because if there's an ability to find a pathway that prevents further victimisation, it would have been good to have legislation that enables that. But already with the removal of funding for cultural reports or looking into the reasons of underpinning offending, this removes even further ability for judges to understand the drivers of crime, to understand what is underpinning the reason why an offender has come to the court in order to attempt to prevent victimisations happening again and again and again. And that's why I do question whether reducing victims and being concerned about victims' rights is actually at the heart of this government's desire or not. Because much of the advice I've seen in this report actually talks about some of the lack of ability to be able to provide for victims. And the Ministry of Justice actually prefers retaining the status quo when the government's told them to commit to prioritise victims because there are already provisions in the Act. So once again, their own officials are telling them that their window dressing is already in place, but they still want to push ahead and talk about doing it anyway because this is a government that is all talk, all shop front, but there's nothing going on to actually drive and reduce reoffending in New Zealand.
Yep.
Ginny's right.
I really like Ginny Anderson. She made a one big blunder when it came to the numbers, but she's very, very good at what she does, and I think people were a little bit too harsh on her when she made that mistake.
I mean, I did say all those stats are misleading, but no, Ginny is right here.
Yeah, on this one she is right. Yes, yeah.